You know, they don't do Naval Gunfire School at Coronado anymore, from what I understand. They moved it to Fort Sill because they didn't always get a ship to come out and shoot, and a lot of it was sim stuff anyways. They were like, we're wasting money doing this. From what I understand, I could be wrong on that.
Yeah, but the experience, man.
Dude, for sure.
God. Yeah, out there in, San Clemente Island?
So, yeah, that's the spot,
anyway,
too.
Yeah.
I love going out there.
Yeah, it was definitely, I mean, it was the first time I flew on a fucking helicopter. All sorts of shit. Oh, no. Wait, we took a C-130 out there.
We did, too.
Yeah, landed at the airfield and then drove all the way south to the old bunker complex. It was called like not Cherry Point, but it was Cherry something.
No, they used to call it the Castle or something like that.
Yeah. It was the old bunker complex.
They don't even do that anymore.
And then the impact area was awesome. Was it China Point? Was the name of the impact area?
I think there was an OP on China Point, I believe.
Man,
there were 3 OPs. Yeah,
I will never forget that. I will never forget actually having an Arleigh Burke off the coast there. Yeah, it was awesome.
You know, the thing is too, like sim training is good, and you can use it to practice TTPs and practice just going through the motions of a call for fire or something like that. But when you're doing fire support, you have to see that shit live. You know what I'm saying? Like, to really understand what it's doing, because
and to appreciate the end power of it all.
Yeah. When I went to TCP school and became a JTAC on the East Coast, so East Coast ranges are well known for not having live ordnance. You know, there's a lot. Most of them you can't drop live ordnance, all sim stuff. And I went to TCP school and I got pushed right into a deployment. I didn't see a live bomb drop until I got to Afghanistan. That was the first time I ever saw an actual live bomb, because when I did when I went to do my pre-deployment training, I was with an advisor team. You go to 29 Palms, but there's no close air support training. It's all advisor team focused. It's all like meetings and stuff like that. And I was like voicing my displeasure about it. I was like, this is kind of crazy that I haven't dropped a bomb yet. It's been months actually since I've dropped a bomb, and we're getting ready to deploy. And
man, I've heard that same exact scenario in songs so many times from so many different people.
Yeah.
It would be fucking hilarious if it wasn't criminal.
Yeah, I don't think that, obviously there's no war going on now. That's probably not as big of an issue. I think they're doing a pretty good job of, I mean, after I moved on from that and became an evaluator, we were pretty, hardcore about getting the designation done, getting all the controls and stuff and making sure people were doing them. And yeah, I don't know. It was a weird time though. That was 2000. When did I go to TSP school? 2012. So, but like 2010 to like 2015, JTACs were just getting like pumped out. Actually, probably before that. Well,
did you go to EWTG Lant in Norfolk?
Yeah, Lant. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went down to Navy Dare for 1 day of training, and then we went kept back to Lejeune, OP. What is that? OP whatever, that main OP.
OP2.
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 And then out to that.
No. If were you at OP1 where the T intersection is? Over by the ASP, the ammo area?
Yeah. Is that OP1?
Yeah, that's OP1.
Yeah, because there's 3, which was that wooden tower, and there was 4 or maybe 2 got replaced.
I got a funny story about that, because I was there when they first built that wooden tower. I got a funny story about that.
That thing is creaky.
Yeah.
I mean, I trust that it's safe, but it's creaky going up it. Yeah, I was at it must have been OP2 when I was we talked about it in the last episode. I was a lap mover, and my very first field op with 10th Marines as a forward observer, I go to the field and I'm with the Fire Support Coordination Center, and you know how they have that little like knoll, that like dirt or whatever, like little hill right there next to the OP, and we set up our FSCC on that hill, and range control comes out, and they're like, "Hey, you can't set up here. It's too much erosion or whatever." And we're like, what? And we're like, we're already fully set up. And our gunny is like talking to him and talks him out of, he was going to make us move off the hill and down it a little bit. And so we didn't do that. Our gunny talked him out of it. And then that night, the very first round of my very first field op, they were shooting the check round. For those that don't know, they shoot one round so that it hits the impact area and the observers go, hey, it's observed safe. We're good to start shooting all the guns to start training. And that first round landed 50 meters from us in the spot that the range control guy was trying to get us to move to. And I was like, what the I mean, I was in the tent.
Holy shit, man.
I was in the tent and I hear shot, target number, shot, target number, whatever. And I hear in the distance there, and I just hear boom. And I'm inside of a base sec. So I'm like, wow. And this is my very first field op with these guys. And I'm like, man, it's a lot louder by the impact area. And somebody was like,
close.
And somebody was like, that was too loud. And my gunny Klein was standing outside the tent, was like, check firing.
Yeah, yes, especially at night with the cool dense air, man, you can feel it. It probably fucking ballooned the tent.
It was crazy, dude. It was like, whoa, that was crazy. I even said to one of the dudes, Delara, I was like, when they shot, I was like, you want to go outside and watch the impact? And he's like, nah. And I was like, all right, I'm going to just sit there. And then boom, and it hit literally 50 meters from us. And everyone thought we were fucked up because we were the closest ones to it. But we came out of the tent and everyone's like, are you okay? And we're like, yeah, where'd it hit? And they like pointed. We're like, oh, shit.
What did you lat move from?
3521, baby. I was a motor T mechanic.
No shit.
Yeah. Yeah, it was miserable. I was I was open contract, and I came in and they sent me to be a mechanic, and I thought maybe I'd go to a cool unit. No, they sent me to maintenance battalion, which is 2nd MLG.
Fuck yeah.
And that was miserable. The best thing I got to do with that was go work on the EFSS program and like shoot the mortars up in Alaska and drive all over those little Jeeps all over the place. So. Oh,
was that with the 120s?
Yeah. Last time we talked for a second that you were actually on like one of the first tests of that. They sent you to France.
Yeah, I was on the fielding program from 10th Marines. Went over there with, actually, I was the fucking lowest ranking dude. I think I was a sergeant at that. No.
Oh, really?
I might have been a sergeant. Maybe a corporal. But yeah, I went over with battalion master sergeant, gunny, and a major. But we were part. That was right before the Marine Corps actually got them. They wanted to send an advanced team over and basically just observe the TTPs and how the French were utilizing it. Mm-hmm. Basically jumping from gun position to gun position. Just kind of get eyes on how they're using it. What were some of the issues they were kind of running into, and how they were maintaining it and keeping it up during ops and stuff.
What'd you think about the French artillery while you were visiting?
So
for those that don't know, you started out as an 0811 before you went to 0861 and then JTAC and all that.
I did. So wait, Justin, are we recording right now? Are we doing this?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so weird. That's so weird. You started out as a motor T guy. I did not know that. That's wow. Yeah, so I started out as an 0811, as a cannoneer. So going over there and watching the French. So the French got these really cool. They're kind of like Paladins. I forget the name of which artillery piece it is. But it was basically like vehicle driven. On the back as a payload, a 155 cannon that had this incredible kind of like loading mechanism in the back. And the French are, they were one of the original developers of modern field artillery. So they take that shit really serious. They had their doctrines down, and to watch them shoot artillery was absolutely incredible. For them, it's an art form in general, with the mathematics and how everything works. Mm-hmm. But they really were precise about the functionality of it and how it's actually employed. So it was great to be there on the gun lines and watch them do that. Yeah, we went there to initially observe the rifled 120 mortars. But watching them shoot their 155 was really impressive with their the cannons that they had. because at the time the Marine Corps was still rocking the 9 or 8s. So this was pre 777s. So the whole, packing up the gun and displacement, things like that, was still very rooted in everything that the Marine Corps was doing with their artillery. But the way that they had their system where it was vehicle mounted, the way they would collapse their gun positions was, completely different. And it was so fast. I was actually just laughing to myself, man. I remember how many times I'm busting my ass to dig spades into the ground or to literally picking up to maneuver the gun to shoot out of trajectory. So doing hip shots and stuff like that. But to see the way that they packed up their equipment so fucking fast and could move and get set up. So it definitely had a lot of, kind of forward looking when it comes to like digital fires that they do with the 777, where they're utilizing GPS for the guns, and then how it communicates to the fire direction center. It was awesome. It was a good time hanging out with the French, especially in the outskirts, away from Paris and getting to see the old country. Then, because basically we were at an area that would be considered their 29 Palms training area.
Okay.
So extremely removed from the city centers, out there towards the east in the old countrysides. But it was a great time. It was a great time going out there and just hanging with the gun line and jumping around and dropping rounds.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, they have traditions back to Napoleon for artillery. That's old school. Yeah. I can imagine they take it pretty seriously. It's always cool to interact with other forces and kind of see how they do things. Just kind of compare, contrast. Sometimes you see other forces that are like not ceremonial, but they kind of slow themselves down by going through like almost chain of command. Every decision, is like has to go through 3 people, even like very tactical decisions. It's like, come on, man, hurry up and make the decision. And that's, we kind of look at that like it's crazy a lot of times because we put so much emphasis on our NCOs being able to make decisions on the fly and kind of backing them up on that,
Yeah. I mean, a good example is, so when I was in 0811, a cannoneer, I was with Kilo Battery, and this is a whole other story, but I was with Kilo Battery 310 out of Camp Lejeune. And, I don't know how much or your viewers know about the 0811 career field, but it is one of those career fields that's extremely bottlenecked, meaning that the jump from E6 staff sergeant to gunny E7 we're talking at the time, it was like 20-1 because you have all these staff sergeants, but as soon as you go to the E7 billet, it bottlenecks because there's only one battery gunnery sergeant per unit. So basically you had all these E6 that are basically stagnant, and their main billets are cannoneers or section chiefs for the howitzers. And I came in there and I got section chief qualified as an E4, which made for some really interesting interactions with the other section chiefs because they're all grumpy E6 that can't get fucking promoted. And here I am, a brand new, promoted E4, and I'm already at the top of the game because in being an 0811 cannoneer, being a howitzer section chief is as good as it gets.
Yeah,
that's like the pinnacle of that MOS for field artillery Marines.
What a bummer, right? That's the pinnacle.
Yeah, and kind of along the same lines as you. With your lat move, I was in my first enlistment and I was, 3 years in, I'm a corporal. I'm already a section chief. I've already, done double cats back to back. I've already, shot over 1,000 rounds in training. And it's like, well, where do you go from here? Do I just still sit in the 0811 billet and just become one of these disgruntled fucking staff sergeants?
You have to love it to do it.
And honestly, as much as I enjoyed it and as much as I learned from being a cannoneer, being a howitzer section chief is pretty satisfying role and job. But you got to understand, shooting the howitzer and manning the howitzer is like 2% of the job. The other 98% is fucking maintenance and just being miserable as a a guy living in a guns platoon.
Yeah. I think you said on the last episode something like it's 5 minutes of cleaning for each round that goes through it or something like that.
At least 5 minutes, man. Your daily routine, you figured Monday through Friday. I would say that being in field artillery, we did have a really good training tempo. I mean, if anybody goes to there's only like one or two other jobs that go to the field more than the infantry does, man. And that's cannoneer. And then I believe fucking tanks, or at the time AAVs, were always out in the field. So our training tempo, I mean, we were out in the field at least 2 weeks out of the month, where we would meet at the armory, 05 on a Monday, go out to the field, shoot all the way through Thursday, come back Thursday. Friday's the maintenance day. But yeah, the maintenance piece of it is just a bitch because it's just a big hunk of exposed steel. And Marines are Marines, and we keep our shit clean, regardless if it needs to be cleaned or not. It's going to be cleaned again.
Yeah, that's a pride amongst the artillery guys is having that weapon ready, and it's well known the maintenance on that is just not cool. It's a lot of
I would say if you're not a fan of bust and rust, and I mean meticulous, we're talking there with little toothbrushes and just scrubbing an area and getting it clean. Field artillery, and I can't speak for the 777s, which I'm sure there's still tons of maintenance on them. But those 19 or 8s were just they were beasts because they were pretty much all exposed steel when it comes to like the barrel portion and the breech area. So it wasn't like it was carbon coated or paint coated. Every piece of steel that was exposed, especially in Lejeune with the humidity. You take that thing out to the field and you start shooting. All you're thinking about is, God, man, this is going to take like 8 hours of bust and rust to get this thing fucking clean.
About, what was it, around 2017, I think, they had, we put artillery into Syria, and they were shooting so much that they shot out the barrels. How, when you're in a situation like that, where you're shooting just constant fire missions, what is the maintenance? Is there maintenance, or is it just ongoing scrubbing?
Okay, so the basic maintenance. So really, in combat situations, the only maintenance required is the actual firing mechanism. So you're making sure that the breech can seal properly, that there's no carbon gunk in the firing mechanism. Rust inside the actual rifling of the cannon. As soon as no matter how much rust is sitting in it, as soon as you fire that first round, it's got a good seat around the copper belt, it actually will clean the cannon. It'll make it as clean as it could ever get. It'll get a lot cleaner than you could scrubbing it by firing that first round and just dragging that copper band up through it. But no, to actually wear one out, most likely you're talking about either the hydraulics that support the cannon barrel. So the barrel piece just for the 777, it's the same barrel model, which is about 16,000 pounds with the hydraulics. So the hydraulics allow you to elevate it and depress it. But wearing it out, honestly, I mean, you don't really wear them out. Where you run into issues is when you're shooting like super stick charges or your max charges, and you're putting extreme pressures on the breech seal. So if you continuously are shooting that cannon at max range, you're starting to wear out all those little pieces and mechanisms that keep that combustion in. So if it starts to, if you start leaking pressure out of the breech area, then that affects the overall distance of the gun. So you start having rounds fall short and things like that. But I mean, you can fire a cannon so much that you blow off the fucking muzzle brake at the end just because you're dumping such high power propellant through it.
My old neighbor, when I was at Lejeune, was an 0811, and I think he was in the Invasion or something like that. And he was talking about how the big charge, what is it, like 5 or whatever, 5 bags. There's only a certain amount around, or you're only supposed you're limited, right? And In training, you're only supposed to shoot a few of those, but before you're not allowed to because of the pressure.
Yeah. So the super stick, which is the max one. It'll fully recoil the weapon as far as it can go. It'll actually lock out. In training, we had a standard where you could only fire a couple. I think it was maybe like four or six supercharges or super sticks during a training event. And then when you fired it, you actually had to use so we had different lanyards. We got a 6-foot lanyard, which actually I have one right here. You know, every good cannoneer has a lanyard from their time in. So you had the regular, the standard lanyard that you would use, but then they made one that was 25 feet long so that you could hook it to the mechanism, the firing mechanism, and fire it from a distance. Because what happens is the concussion that's generated from the charge is rattling your insides. It's basically like getting hit with a sledgehammer in the chest. And your body can only take so much of it. But obviously in combat conditions, all that shit's wavered.
Yeah, he said they were like bleeding they're like getting nosebleeds and shit from shooting so many of them.
Yeah, because you're right inside. I mean, hell, if you're shooting like super charges and sticks, and you're inside that immediate, 10, 20 feet around the breach, you're just taking the max concussion wave out of that thing. So when you talk about like TBI, God, man, and those guys were shooting at max range, so they're just firing nothing but, charge 8 sticks and just rattling their inside. And then, 10 years down the road, they're wondering why they can't hold a thought anymore.
Yeah, that'll do it, man. But it's cool.
Yeah, it's cool as shit, man. And honestly, it's guys shooting guns. It's a big ass gun. It's only like I used to say to other people when I lap moved. Being a cannoneer is great when you're firing the gun. Everything else about it absolutely sucks. But honestly, you could probably say that pretty much about any job. For sure. But when it comes to being a cannoneer, that definitely held true.
Yeah, I never envied those guys. I mean, it looks like they had a good time and everything. It's cool. You don't get like a group that is kind of close knit, like a gun, like a section, because, they all just live on that gun every day. So it's like one of those things where you're just naturally all become like super close. You can't really replicate stuff like that. Even as an FO, you're kind of moving around enough where you're not really next to each other all the time, like constantly. It doesn't matter what they're doing. They're on the gun, until you're no longer, you're above the section chief and you go on and do other things. But
yeah, I mean, the FO life is you're just kind of hoard out and passed around, depending on who's deploying. But yeah, you're absolutely right about the gun sections, because I was a chief for a few years, and even when we deployed, with the regimental combat teams, RC2 and I think RC5 was the ones we went with. We didn't even take our fucking howitzers. They stayed in Lejeune, and they transformed all the firing batteries into provisional rifle companies. So my gun basically became my squad, which worked out great because we already knew each other and we were already so close operating a gun. It wasn't a very hard transition to say, hey, we're taking your guns away. You can keep your trucks. And now you have to patrol. Yeah.
What do you think about the Marine Corps switching from more tube artillery to like HIMARS and stuff?
As a fire support guy, honestly, the firing platform, I don't really think I'm not vested in any one piece, even though I do have a love for artillery. But I think when you ask any fire support guy, especially somebody who's really passionate about it, the delivery mechanism isn't really as important as the effects that it renders on the battle space. And when it's available, right? Because, HIMARS and ATACMs and those things are great, but, you're putting those things, you're basically launching a fucking telephone pole at like 80,000 feet. So you have to clear all this airspace. You have to do all this type of coordination prior to receiving that support. So you start looking at different fire support platforms. And when I say fire support platforms, I mean aircraft. I mean naval gunfire, anything that goes boom and can be assistant to providing those effects in the battle space. That's fire support. Mm-hmm. So it's not so much about the delivery platform. You more start thinking about, well, how easy is it to access that platform, and when is it readily available? Because ATACMs are cool, but if you've got a firing battery that's living only 20 kilometers away and they'll shoot in the middle of a fucking snowstorm, that's more of a go-to asset than trying to get an ATACMs that's got to go up through a fucking 2-star general and come back down, and they got to move the AWACS out of the way just to shoot the damn thing.
Yeah. And, the thing to me is like HIMARS are cool. We used them in Afghanistan, like where I was at in Marja at the time. HIMARS were like perfect because our tube artillery, everything was either happening outside of its range or on the very edge of its range. So the time of flight for HIMARS was better. But the thing about HIMARS is if you're talking about shooting a lot, they have 6 rounds and then they have to be replaced. Like how fast is that to swap out than it is to throw some more rounds at a gun, that can just shoot as what, 2 or 3 or 3 rounds a minute, 4 rounds a minute or something like that. I mean, they can shoot quite a few out of the 777. So I don't know. It's kind of crazy to me. And ATACMs, I mean, we just gave the green light to Ukraine we gave those to the Ukraine for them to use. And we never even used those in Afghanistan, they were used, but only like a handful of times, like 2 or 3 times. I only know of one that I can really think of offhand. But I mean, you guys didn't use any HIMARS or anything like that while you were there, right?
No, we didn't have anything. We didn't have a battery within reach, and the ATACMs, that's a one-shot container versus the 6 HIMARS that are in the casing. Mm-hmm. But in ATACMs, they're just so fucking expensive.
Yeah.
And the target value's got to be extremely high to recommend using that type of weapon. I mean, it's awesome. It's GPS. It's got a great attack angle on it, and it can be launched from a long distance. But there's just so much into it, and you just have to have a high payoff target for it.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how Ukraine utilizes them. I don't necessarily agree with us sending those to them because we don't have very many, I don't believe. I don't know how many we have in stock, but I don't think it's very many. So we should probably hold on to them. But again, like we wouldn't even use them ourselves in Afghanistan because like what you're talking about. So it's like, so to give them away seems kind of crazy, but it is what it is. It's a weird world right now for fire support, combat in general, like I remember in Afghanistan when I think it was the MARSOC guys were the first dudes I saw had the switchblade. Did you guys have that at all?
So I was there when they were first bringing it on board. I actually had to go so as soon as I got in country, I had to go get my classified briefing on Switchblade, and they basically laid out all the parameters on how you were going to use it. If you were going to utilize Switchblade, you actually had to have another UAV with eyes on target, so you couldn't just the way the Switchblade is designed, you should basically throw it up, you loiter with it, you use the optic on it or the sensor on it to find the target, and you smack the target. Well, they were hesitant to have us use it like that, so we actually had to have another RPA asset up. Either, I could have used my Raven, right? So I could have used that, or you had to have another ISR sensor. So it just didn't make any sense to use them, because if you had a Predator or you had a fucking Reaper overhead, why am I going to use this tiny ass loiter munition for something that's worth killing?
Mm-hmm.
So it just made the stipulations for actually employing it not feasible. And you're like, so why do I want to use this little thing?
Yeah, like, oh, it seems handy, but you're putting
at it or something.
Yeah. That's I look at that as like that's the first like kind of mini drone warfare, right? And now we see all these
Yeah.
videos coming out of Ukraine of these Russians and these fucking Ukrainians like dropping drones on each other. It's
Yeah,
so crazy.
So Switchblade, great asset. It just wasn't the right environment for it.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, if you look at like a Ukraine situation where you're hunkered down, in a trench line, or there's just so much request for fire support across the front line that you kind of have to push it back down to the organic level with the units to provide their own quasi, air support or fire support.
I think we'll see kind of a evolution where, you know how infantry companies have their own mortarmen, you got a 60s guy or something like that. Well, instead of having a 60s guy, now we have a drone guy. You know, he's got a drone that has and he carries a backpack that's got like 6 mortars or whatever explosives on it that he can use and drop on the enemy. Like, I feel like that's where we're going to end up because it's, you know, as fucked up as it is, it's like it works.
Yeah. Absolutely. Or if you maybe like the headquarters company, you have like a drone dispatcher where they utilize the vehicles to, bring a bunch of tubes of these, one-shot fucking drones, and they just throw them up and hand them off to the line companies.
What a weird world, dude.
Yeah.
I'm so glad we didn't have to do that stuff. Like, I could not imagine having to be sitting there constantly worrying about a little mini drone flying up to me and smacking me, or dropping a grenade on me or something like that. Like, and some of these videos are just insane of like, it's almost like the drone operators are taunting some of these people, like chasing them around a little bit and then blowing up. And it's like, dude.
Especially when you're talking about like hover munitions, where you can literally just sit there and observe, within, I don't know, 50 feet, just out of small arms fire range and just observe. The enemy knows you're there, and it's just the battle space and the predicament they're in with the terrain. There's just really no place for them to fucking go besides the other end of the trench line.
Yeah. Straight up trench warfare, dude.
That, it's just blasted away fucking open space to the next, burnt out tree line.
So crazy. It's old school war with technology involved.
Yes, it is.
Russia's been using artillery like they used to do, like almost like the sweep and clear or whatever it's called, where they take out like a whole grid square, just shooting artillery. Like, oh man, it's wild. I don't know. It does not seem like a good time.
I feel for it, man. It's got to suck, man. Being in a barbaric style fight with modern tech, is just not the best situation. Yeah.
When you got out, were you ever considering doing like contracting, or did you do contracting or anything like that?
So I did contracting, nothing for like security or anything like that. I mainly just worked with training evolution. So, I worked at Fort Carson for a little bit with the ranges down there. Really started to get back into RPAs, so remotely piloted aircraft with the since I was a Raven operator in the Marine Corps, when the U.S. Air Force Academy stood up their RPA program, I went up there to be an instructor evaluator, and then we expanded and got the Puma, so the RQ-20s, got the Puma with the advanced sensor package on them, so I think it was like the I-45 sensor suite on it. So really got into that piece, and that was it's kind of weird because that was when the fight with ISIS really kicked off. And we started seeing those first glimpses of off-the-shelf tech with the DJI drones, and they modified. And we actually were able to get our hands on one of the DJIs from Syria, and pull apart and take a look at how exactly they used it. And it was just, it was revolutionary. And I can almost say with certain that the first inklings and the ingenuity that ISIS did with their DJIs and dropping grenades definitely, sparked the imagination for what you see in Ukraine.
Yeah, for sure. Didn't they just so I bought a DJI drone a year or two before all that shit kicked off, because I remember seeing one. Actually, I had a buddy at MARSOC who had one. It was not, I don't know if it was DJI, but it was a quadcopter drone. and he brought it out to San Clemente Island. And I was like, dude, what the fuck is that? I was like, that's badass. And then that's when I got online and I found the DJI, and I still have it. It's actually over there on the shelf. And but I think ISIS started using a engagement ring dropping connection. There's like a attachment for the drone for like if you're a wedding photographer, you could fly in an engagement ring and drop it. There's like a device for that, and they modified that to hold like grenades or hold the ends of mortars and stuff. Is that kind of what you guys saw?
Well, no, basically what they do is they just take one of the functionalities that already exists in the quadcopter. So the most common one was the trigger or the signal to turn on the lights. So the running lights that it had. So basically you disconnect that and basically just hook a little servo to it that has a little claw thing or something like that. And then you basically hijack that function to trigger the release of the servo to drop the whatever you're carrying.
So crazy, dude.
Yeah. It's poor man tech, but I tell you what, it works.
Dude.
And it's a hell of a lot cheaper than a fucking Hellfire.
I mean, what's a Puma cost? You know what I'm saying? Like any of our stuff is so expensive, and they're taking stuff right off the shelf and modifying it. That's why it's hard. That's why we end up in these weird predicaments, because we want to throw money at it, but we throw money at these like crazy expensive stuff to defeat stuff that's super simple. What did it cost to make an IED in a yellow jug? Not much, but the tech, the MRAPs, the mine rollers, the counter signals and all that shit to block, like all of that was so crazy to develop and then implement, So I guess they can bleed us dry that way. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. It's crazy though. Yeah, that shit is that drone stuff is crazy though. I'm just so glad. I mean, it sucks for the people that are over there. And it's crazy, like, we don't hear more about these, like we have troops in Syria. And I saw something the other day, it's like 120 or 220 have been injured in the last like 4 months from like explosives, from like drones and shit. And I'm like, dude, why is this not all over the news? Like I guess like the major strikes are, those have come up on the news, but I don't know, man. It's a different world out there. I can't imagine being worried about that.
It's the modern warfare fatigue, man, where, I don't know, it just seems like 20 years ago, it had to, you had to declare war, and it had to go through, certain processes to actually, come about. But, with the global war on terror, and they basically, Congress created the open-ended fucking war based on parameters. It's just, we've got, little things ticking off here and there and everywhere. And it's just, at some point, it just gets so saturated that things that should matter just kind of fade away to the fray because, the public and the media just get so burned out on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be good, though, if, like, there's no coverage of all this stuff happening and then something bad happens, we lose some people. That's going to, then it's going to get fucking...
happen, man. And unfortunately, that's what it's going to take. It's going to take something catastrophic and kind of event changing to snap, not only the U.S. public, but the kind of Western civilization in general to say, hey, man, you need to wake up.
Mm-hmm. I just saw this morning that a Chinese ship was hit by a Houthi rocket. So I imagine, I was like, oh, that's not good. That's their homies, That's supposed to be their buddies over there or whatever. I don't know the.
Yeah, I mean, their targeting is half-assed. I mean, depending on what they can get from Iranian surveillance, how do you really target a boat out at sea if you can't even fucking see it?
I used to wonder, man. I used to, being part of the Muse staff. I was on the Muse staff and doing planning and hearing about like anti-ship missiles and this and that. And I used to be like, man, like one of these missiles could take us out. That's crazy. Yeah. But I believe like what we've seen over there so far is that's increased my like trust in the defense systems that the ships have. I think a few weeks ago, there was like a swarm of like 24 missiles or something like that they took down. I was like, oh shit. Like, I don't know. It was kind of reassuring to hear that these defense systems that they have for these anti-ship missiles actually work, because you never know, right?
Like the passive defensive systems. Because even if they, worst comes to worst, they just try to saturate the target area to kind of overwhelm the defense mechanism. But yeah, these passive defensive systems, it only makes you think about, okay, well, this is the Houthi. Imagine if you had like a near peer adversary, say like China, how they would employ those type of munitions. Now, in those instances, it may well easily saturate a defense system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I hope that doesn't happen, that we find out, but
I do too, brother. I do too.
I feel like we're inching towards it slowly. I don't know why, but it is what it is, I guess.
Fucking car wreck in slow motion, man.
I wanted to, so the U.S. right now is doing airdrops to do humanitarian aid in Gaza and stuff like that. You were kind of involved. I mean, that's kind of part of being a MARSOC JTAC deployed to Afghanistan, was getting resupplied by airdrops. Can you kind of talk us through the planning and stuff for that kind of mission so that people can understand how that is executed and, like what it kind of looks like?
So and I've seen the airdrop footage fucking on TV where they're dropping on the beaches and things like that.
Yeah.
That shit is so fucking dangerous. And don't act surprised when people die.
They said some got killed by Jordanian airdrops.
That's how it fucking works. Okay, so when I was a controller with MARSOC, first of all, once we got to our forward operating base in Afghanistan, I had no idea that I was going to be responsible for airdrops, and nobody ever told me. I didn't know that was going to be like one of my primary job beyond terminal control. Prior to that, I read about CDS delivery, so container delivery system. That's the actual name for it. It's called a CDS. I've read about a CDS drop before, but I never fucking trained on it. Nobody ever walked me through like, hey, this is what you should do, and these are the things you should look for.
Time to pull out the J-Fire and see what's up in there.
Right? I shit you not, man. My first CDS drop was like at 02 in Afghanistan with a crosswind on a drop zone that I never seen before. I actually was reading through my J-Fires prior to the drop saying, okay, this is what I got to do. But in the J-Fires, it doesn't really go into like, hey, these are variables that you should look out for. This is when it doesn't look good. And, you're on nods. So we go out there, we mark the DZ with an IR strobe. Okay, so got that. So the aircraft can see the DZ. We've got the approach vector for it. But I tell you what, man, when you first get eyes on the first one I think was a C-130, but when you start doing C-17s, when you visually pick that thing up at nighttime at like 15 kilometers, there's no way to judge the angle that it's coming in on, because the difference between 10 degrees and 20 degrees at that distance doesn't fucking matter. But I had my first airdrop at night and I didn't know what a burn-in was. So basically, when a shoot fails, because nothing is 100%. And if you're doing, a C-17 or a C-130 and you've got 10 pallets, or if you're doing a C-17 with fucking 20 pallets, the odds are that one of those shoots is not going to work, and it's called a burn-in. Basically, it doesn't blossom out, and it's just a fucking pile driver straight to the ground. So it always runs the risk of that. And then when I see them doing these airdrops on the beach, and it's like, God damn, dude. And especially when one burns in, and those pallets, especially, let's say you got a pallet of water. How many pounds is a pallet of water?
Yeah.
And you're kicking that thing out of the back at anywhere between like 500, 600 feet off the ground, and no chute opens. It's basically like dropping a pallet of cement bags directly to the ground. And the people on the ground, they have no idea the dangers in it. We know just because, we're controllers, we understand angles. We understand, okay, if there's no wind drift, if you're just off the line of delivery, you're good. But then you start talking about drift, especially on the beach like that with the coastal breezes and stuff. Depending on how high they drop them, that just amplifies the amount of time that the chute's in the air. It can drift. We used to have all sorts of problems with CDS because you can only plan for so much. You can only take in so many variables. But once the chute releases, it's just a standalone fucking parachute coming down. You've got no control over it. Again, especially when it burns in, even if it's coming down as intended, it could easily crush you.
Oh yeah, dude. That'd be like an elephant slowly sitting on you. It's still gonna kill you.
Yeah. And I caught a picture, or I caught a glimpse of one of the videos of one of the first drops, and I see all these people on the beach, and I'm just internally, I'm like, this is so fucking
running
bad.
Towards the parachutes.
Oh my god, dude.
Oh. Yeah, I wonder how they planned that, how they coordinated that.
5 people got crushed. I'm like, no shit, yeah, that's what happens.
I wonder how they coordinated that, where maybe they chose the beach thinking like, well, if we put it as close to the water as possible, that's the fewest amount of people, but then they bitched about it going in the water, so.
Well, yeah. Well, you run into that issue too, so you basically gotta think about, okay, you got to at least have some type of spotting aircraft, and you don't want to do multiple passes.
Yeah. Because
as soon as you do the first pass, that's going to draw everybody out, and then the second pass will become even more deadly. So you want to look for an area that basically doesn't have anyone on it. Just take advantage of the opportunity to have an open drop zone area and just put one in. And get out of there. Don't do multiple ones, especially in the same fucking drop zone.
Did you guys always do it at night to minimize like the civilian populace out there?
Yeah. So we always did ours at night, and I'll be honest with you, I was actually thinking about this the other day for some stupid fucking reason. But I'm like, why were we always doing it at night? Because the Italians, when they would do theirs, they would do theirs in the middle of the fucking night. Everybody's awake, everybody's aware. 82nd Airborne would actually do theirs at night. I don't know if ours were being done at night because of the frequency and the usage, that was just the available time to do it. But we always did ours at like 2:00 in the morning, which it had gotten dangerous on a couple different times, especially with the C-17 dropping higher than the C-130. And our approach was all fucked up because the way they had to approach the drop zone, as soon as they released, they were basically like 3 kilometers from an international border. So they had to immediately, it was actually pretty cool at night on NOD, seeing a C-17 immediately fucking throttle up, climb, and bank after releasing. But yeah, at night, because what the problem that came with us is because everybody's sleeping at night. Everybody's in their tents. One night we had the drop looked good. The approach looked good. It had the drop zone, had the marker. But when it released, it's just the winds up above the hills, because our valley had at least 300, 400 foot hills on either side. So the wind at the DZ seemed fair, was calm. But as soon as you crested above the hilltop, the winds were a lot higher. So what had happened when they released them, a lot of the pallets, and this was a fuel drop. So this was 20 pallets of, each pallet had a 4 55-gallon drums of JP8 fuel on them, and some Go Juice. But when it released it, the winds up top pushed them out over the fob. So when they started to come down, we could see about halfway down that, hey, these things are off the drop zone. They're basically going to land in the fob area, and everybody's living in tents. Everybody's living in something that cannot support, God forbid, and one of them didn't burn in. But even coming down slowly in a chute, you're talking about 4, 55-gallon drums of fuel. We had one hit a tent, and you're just kind of watching this in slow motion as they get closer and closer. You're trying to yell, but there's nobody awake.
Yeah.
And all I can think of is, and it landed kind of halfway in between our compound area and where the Italians were, where they had their 120 set up. And one crushed the corner of a fucking hooch. And all I'm thinking is, I just killed somebody.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I just crushed somebody in their fucking sleep because the winds were different at 400 feet than they were at surface. Yeah, so a lot of things can go wrong. To kind of go back, it's definitely safer to do it during the day because everybody's awake, everybody's heads up. So we actually changed our TDP after that, where when we were doing drops, everybody in the fob had to be awake and in hard cover.
Yeah, dude, it's sketch. I mean, when I've heard multiple incidents happening in Afghanistan. I've heard both not something like stuff like that. I've heard people dropping during the day or early enough where the locals saw it and they were like trying to get up there to get up on pallets too. You know, I've heard of guys, I think a MARSOC JTAC got killed flipping over an ATV, moving to one of those drop zones or something like that at night, you know, because it's just, I don't know, it's just like dangerous. All of it's obviously dangerous. So
yeah, and you know, it's routine shit that we were doing. You know, we were doing 2 drops a week. So it's just this routine thing that's extremely fucking dangerous to do.
That's crazy too, because when you're out there in a place like that where that's your only resupply, you can't really afford to lose a pallet. You know, like you're talking about earlier, having them burn in. You know, if one comes in and destroys whatever it's carrying, that's probably something you needed. You know.
So funny story. So yeah, one night we had one burn in, and at first, I mean, we didn't know what it was. And as soon as it hits the ground, I mean, it's kind of cool to watch, but you're like, man, that's food, man. But it smacked the fucking ground and basically exploded. And then one of our guys, once the drop was cleared, now all the pallets are down and accounted for. We run out there, we're like, hey, man, what was it? And we run out there like, oh, man, it was the fucking Gatorade pallet. And it just fucking exploded when it hit the ground. No. So there goes all of our Gatorade, man. It was Gatorade shakes too, so the good shit.
Oh, it wasn't those. Remember that fake like Gatorade Powerade shit they had out there? That was like super sweet. It was like super sugary. That shit would always give me heartburn. There was like a blueberry one that would always give me heartburn.
The Gatorade shakes that came in those gray fucking cans.
We never got those. God.
Oh, they were awesome. Yeah, but we were super fucking bummed when it exploded.
Yeah. What did you guys do with like all the parachutes? If you're getting drops twice a week, do you recover the chutes?
So basically, so we keep the chutes. The only thing we had to return were the harness mechanisms. So basically, we'd have like a big container, and we would just dump the harnesses and stuff like that in the webbing. Actually, we use the webbing for a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
It's really good material, and we had our own sewing machines and stuff like that, like heavy duty sewing machines, so we can modify and make stuff. So the straps are really good for making a lot of stuff.
Like, because it's like ratchet strap material. It's that thick.
Yeah. So we would use like the webbing and stuff to make breaching nunchucks. I don't know if you know what that is.
No. So
basically, you take 2 engineering stakes and pack them with C4, and then link them together with a fucking a pallet strap or something like that, so that you could basically walk up to a wall. Doesn't matter how fucking thick it is, but you can basically just drape the nunchucks over the wall and then blow it.
That's crazy. No, I've never heard of that. That's badass. Yeah,
breaching nunchucks. They're a pain in the ass to carry, man, because they're fucking heavy.
Oh yeah, engineering stakes are heavy already.
Yeah, so if you're carrying them out on an op or something, those bitches are getting used because we ain't carrying them back.
Yeah, you're like, dude, just let's blow that wall right there. This is good enough for me.
And so we put all the straps and all the valuable stuff, we put it in containers, and then the Army would send it back to the Air Force every week or two. But the parachutes themselves, we would actually, we had local workers that worked on our compound and were helping build stuff. We would actually give it to them to use for whatever around the house, or turn around and fucking sell the fabric or something like that, something to help them out.
That's cool.
Because other than that, it's just nylon shit that would just get burned up.
Yeah, I have a parachute, which is probably not good to have, but I have a parachute from an old loom round, which is probably doused in chemicals and shit. But I've had it like in the garage forever, or like I don't know what to do with it. Like I was like, I'm gonna use this as like a wall decoration or something at some point. You know, something cool to have, but now I just don't know what I'm gonna do with it. It's just this like parachute that I have sitting in a fucking box somewhere. That's what happens though.
So was it a 203 loom?
No, I think it's from an artillery.
Oh, an artillery loom?
Yeah, it's like a huge white parachute.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, that's the only thing I can think it came from. I believe, I want to say I grabbed it while I was in 29 Palms. I came across it and I was like,
yeah,
take
yeah,
that.
it was probably an loom parachute.
Yeah, so I imagine it's covered in, like I said, in chemicals. So it's probably not good to be around, but
Yeah, don't carry it through customs.
Oh shit, yeah, no way. Yeah,
fucking trigger the dog.
Everything for sure. We had, I remember when I was working on that EFSS project, we were coming back from, I don't remember where we were either going to 29 Palms or maybe we were coming back. I don't remember. And we were flying through regular airline, commercial airline, and the infantry guys that we had, a bunch of them were assaultmen, and the week prior they had been doing like breaching and stuff. And they had like C4 in their bags.
Yeah.
So they all got set off the alarms on the fucking, like going through security and everything like that. But it's funny when that kind of shit. Yeah, it's funny when that kind of shit happens. When you were out in the middle of nowhere in Afghanistan, on the last episode, you kind of talked a little bit about it. We talk about it in your book and stuff, Level Zero Heroes and Dagger 2-2. Both good books, good for people to read. I think I said it in the last episode too, but I picked those up either right before I became a JTAC or around that time frame. It was like, oh shit, here's this book, interesting read, right? When you were out there, the fire support assets, you said you didn't have HIMARS because you guys are too far out. There's really no real artillery. I think you were just using the Italian 120s and different air support assets. Did you guys, but you also mentioned using bone a lot. Did you prefer having bone on station or having like the gunship, the AC-130 on station?
So with organic fire support, so we carried our handheld 60s with us, use the Italian 120s because obviously they're rifled, and the Italians they're so fucking good at artillery, it's ridiculous. And then we also had a platoon of 81s from the 82nd Airborne. But when it came to aviation assets, honestly, it just had to do with where we were located, and the fact that it was so far out of the regular holding patterns for aviation that it didn't really make sense to push up a fast mover to us if it wasn't absolutely necessary. Like, so for a regular ATO, like a regular air tasking order or submitting it's called an ITAR. ITAR? Yeah, ITAR for air support request. And then, no, not ITAR. JTAR. Yeah, JTAR. Joint Tactical Airstrike Request. So when submitting those, it's really hard to do with fast movers because you're talking about, especially if they're just doing one volley with you. So once they actually get to your AO or get overhead, they basically are coming to you with one tank of gas. Yeah. And they've got about 40 minutes on station before they got to bug out. If it's not like a troops in contact situation where there's a fueler within reach. So basically you're submitting a request for a 40-minute window and you're like, hey, we're going on a foot patrol. Where do I schedule this 40 minutes in the patrol? So it honestly, when I submitted my I really did submit JTARs. I would submit them just to give a heads up to our air officer at the SOTA, so the Special Operations Task Force, and just to put something up on the board for like the KAOC or for the Siege of SOTA, so that they knew we were out and doing something. But more times, more than likely, when we did get into troops in contact, or no, take that back. When not in troops in contact, having the bomber up there was really the best asset because if we couldn't get an RPA, which at the time were the MQ-9s, or actually the Predators, so the MQ-1s, it was very hard to get an MQ-9 because that shit was all being used by higher tier assets. AC-130 gunships were fucking hard to come by, just because of the limited amount of airframes. So I think you had like 5 or 6 airframes in country, and fucking CAG owned like 5 of them. So it was really hard to get them. Really, the only time you would actually get them is when CAG would release them. You could get them. So the bomber was like my go-to, because when they showed up on station, they had 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So now the window went from 40 minutes to 3 hours. I'm like, okay, I can work with 3 hours. And it was, it's just real easy, especially if, they were able to refuel. Now you got another 3 hours. You don't have the option when you have a multi-flight section to be able to do yo-yo ops, to send one to the tanker while one provides support, and then they hot swap. But having the bomber was kind of ideally the asset that I really liked.
Nice.
And on top of that, just the precision and the size of the ordnance that it carried, because like standard Afghan loadout was like, I don't know, it was like 20 GBU-38, so 500 pounders, and 5 GBU-31 2,000 pounders. And the good thing about it was where we were at, especially in the wintertime, we were always socked in with fucking clouds. And that cloud deck was like right at the top of the mountain, so that it hindered rotary wing from getting to us. But the bomber could get there. And even with the bomber at altitude above the cloud deck, we couldn't use the sniper pod because we'd have solid cloud cover, but they also had the ability to do synthetic aperture radar sweeps.
Mm-hmm.
So using their SAR sweep, basically using their radar to swipe the target area. And I actually did a couple radar talk-ons, basically, activating my beacon on the ground so that their radar can pick it up and say, okay, we got your radar ping, you're positive, we got that. And I say, hey, just start sweeping to the north of me or to the south. And, they can basically make out anything larger than, say, a four-door car.
Oh, that's cool.
So when you talk about, like, if they sweep a village, they can see the buildings, they can see the walls. So that means they can make out where streets are, and you can go from there. So even with totally socked in clouds, not being able to get rotary wing or being too far out to get a fixed wing up there, because even sometimes when the cloud deck's so low, you can't even bring the fixed wing underneath of it, because that basically puts them lower than the mountains, which they just don't. That's bad juju, man. You don't fucking want to do that. To a pilot, man. Like, I can get below the cloud deck, but I can't tell you what's going to be there when you fucking pop out. So having the bomber, man, and it's weird because a guy that I work with is a former B-1 pilot, and I've actually worked at the Air Force Academy. I've run into quite a few B-1 pilots that were actually in Afghanistan during the time frame I was up there, and just sharing some of the stories and saying, hey, man, I get it. The B-1 Lancer is a strategic airframe designed to deliver nukes from, like, the homeland. But using it as a close air support weapon platform, it was one of my go-to, man.
Yeah.
I fucking love it.
Were they flying? Do you know where they were flying out of? Because don't they come out of, like, Guam and shit? Like, even to go to, like, Afghanistan?
Well, at the time, they were flying out of fucking, I want to say UAE.
That's so crazy.
Yeah. So they, directly from it, coming from the KAOC, flying out of that area, and it's, a quick transit up to Afghanistan. We got plenty of fueler tracks going, so you get you some gas. But yeah, my bomber was a go-to, especially when it came time to just fucking decimate stuff. Because most of the stuff that we were dealing with was fortified positions. So basically, shooting from buildings, not so much out in the open type of deal where, say like an Apache is good for, but definitely great for hitting static targets like tree lines, rat trails, definitely fucking taking buildings down, especially when you're talking about like 1.5 story little fucking mud huts and stuff. You can't do no better than a fucking bone.
You guys were dealing with like tunnel systems and shit too, right?
Yeah. So a couple of the villages down south, and these tunnel systems were fucking old. Like they weren't developed during the GWAT time in Afghanistan. So these tunnel systems we're talking Soviet Union era networks, where they basically villages. It was kind of part of just how a village was formed. Like during Russian occupation, like, yeah, the village exists, but you also want to have a secondary mechanism and tunnel system underneath of it to facilitate any type of village defense against anybody, not even just the Soviets, just fighting against other, other militia groups or other fucking clans and stuff. So these villages, a lot of these tunnel systems were old and also could be used as like irrigation.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Like the Carez systems that they had and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's, man, tunnels and shit. That's so crazy. I've heard that there's more and more training focusing on that because a lot of countries are doing these underground, all that kind of deal. But that's sketchy as fuck. Having to go through a tunnel. That's a great time to have a dog leading the way.
Yeah. I mean, you're really limited to your fucking options of what you can really do. It's either A, don't go in the tunnel, or B, you have to go into the tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
And then where do you go from there? Yeah, having a dog, having some type of robotics, man. And I see all the footage coming out of, Gaza with the IDF and stuff going, and those tunnel systems are fucking robust.
They're talking about flooding them. I guess, I don't know if they ever did or not. I think Egypt did that at some point to Hamas. There was they had some issues and they just filled the tunnels with seawater. And I'm like, well, that's one way to do it, I guess. But I guess there's a concern that it'll fuck up any kind of agriculture because they were going to use seawater, which is salt water, which will, but I don't know what their agricultural situation looks like in
I'm not aware of too much produce coming out of fucking Gaza.
Out of the Gaza Strip. Yeah, I don't know. It's dude, but dealing with that, I mean, that's no different than talking about guys going into Fallujah and stuff and doing house to house. Every hidden corner is an unknown. There may be a chair over there with a jacket on it where I can't see behind the chair. That means someone could be behind that chair. And every fucking room is like that. The stress from doing that has got to be just out of control,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it fucking wear you down from the inside.
Did you guys didn't ever really go into the tunnels, right? You guys mostly just tried to collapse them?
Yeah, collapsing them was probably was the best thing to do. Once we identified one, usually the first thing to do is drop a couple frags down it, and at least try to collapse it. Really just depending on where that tunnel system is. Some of them, the entry exits would be inside a building. Sometimes they were outside of buildings. But yeah, the best course of action is just try to collapse it and remove it because we weren't sending nobody into them. We're not sending fucking dogs into them. We'll just collapse them and force them to come out another end.
Yeah, I remember being young, elementary school, I believe, and going to my dad. My dad was in the Army. And then he got out of the active Army and was in the reserves, and he was part of the 377th Combat Support Hospital who went to the Gulf War. And one of the guys, I remember him telling me, one of the guys in his unit, I met him one day at his work, and he's like, yeah, that dude was in Vietnam. And then he told me that he was a tunnel rat that had gone into a tunnel, and the tunnel collapsed on him. And it took him a full day to dig him out. And he was like, yeah, he's super claustrophobic now and everything. It's like, yeah, no shit. Yeah, dude. You see those videos, those tunnel rats going in with a pistol and a flashlight during Vietnam. It's that's wild shit, man.
Nope, ain't happening, man.
What a madman. Yeah. Man. Tunnels. It's all the way back to World War II, World War I. I feel like there's been tunnels in every conflict. So,
yeah.
I mean, just recently, well, not recently, but I guess within the last 10 years, that's when they killed the leader of ISIS, that Baghdadi or whatever. They got him in a tunnel.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, with a dog. Yeah, they had to use a dog. They sent the dog in.
Tunnels are common practice, man. It's basically, if you've got a rural or urban area, really your only bug out or fallback situation is in the ground.
There's homeless communities that live underground here in the U.S. and these cities,
You've heard about the underground community in fucking Vegas and stuff?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I did.
So they've got those huge networks for I believe they're mainly they're like runoff for like when they have like massive flooding and rain and stuff.
Yeah.
So like 90% of the time they're empty, and they're only used for those extreme circumstances where there's massive flooding stuff. But there's like whole communities and they've got like a fucking flea market down in these tunnels.
It's like the Ninja Turtles is coming to life. They had like the Foot had their underground like
honestly, it actually kind of interests me. Like I wouldn't mind like just doing a little run through, pick up something from the market down there.
Check it out. Hit up the underground rave.
Yeah.
That shit happens out here. I see it on Instagram sometimes. I'm in San Diego and there's like, you hear about these like underground raves or these ones that are under freeway overpasses and shit like that. It's like, what the fuck is happening? That's crazy. When is it?
Fucking, what they call it, the mole people, man.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. Dude, working in tunnels and stuff though, that's just that would be some vicious fighting. That would be no good. And like back to like the Ukraine and shit, like we were saying before, this is like straight up World War II or World War One, like, trench warfare. Some of these videos of these guys running through trenches and clearing trenches, I'm like, damn, I cannot believe we're doing this still, And what's wild, and, during the global war on terror, some guys had GoPros and there was some footage from combat camera and shit like that. But now it seems like everything is being filmed in fucking 4K. We're watching dudes get murked in 4K and it's like, oh shit, that sucks. As I'm flipping through Instagram and on to the next video, like, I don't know, man. It's so weird that it's so accessible and we're all like grossed out by it.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, for people that aren't, haven't experienced it or know what they're looking at, it can almost become desensitizing for especially people that don't have any experience or any type of understanding of what it is they're actually looking at. Like, hey, this is from a quadcopter and this dude's about to have his fucking guts blown out. And
straight war porn.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, it's fucking war porn. And you're right. People don't. I remember right after I got out of the Marines, none of my neighbors, when I moved off base, and obviously because I was out, all my neighbors are civilians. I'm at like my neighbor's cookout, and I'd known him for a while, and his buddy comes over, and he was asking me about the military and stuff. And I pulled up a video, and I showed him like a strike video, and just not even thinking about it. And it wasn't like now where it's like HD. It was like one of those older like black and white thermal kind of grainy. And you just see this dude get smoked, and he's like, did I just watch somebody die? And I'm like, oh, my bad. I'm like, sorry, wrong crowd. But now that's like common, like everybody sees that shit on social media.
Yeah, fucking kill footage is not your target demographic.
It's so crazy. And then, once you've swiped so much, you've gone through all the war porn, then you start getting in like the cartel stuff and everything, watching airplanes landing in the jungles and shit in South America. That's social media, though.
Yeah, man.
Dude, I don't know, man. It's just such a crazy time. I don't know. It's such a crazy time to be in the military and like deal with stuff like that and how the threats are changing. At some point it's going to be all bots, dude. It's going to be like UAV versus UAV fights and shit. I'm sure there's something like that going on at some level already, but just such a weird time.
You know what? I would say something to that, and I hear that from many people. Actually, I have somebody that had a quote that they would like to say that fighting in the global war on terrorism, we got really good at kicking in doors and getting face to face, and then looking forward at, hey, tech's changing. We're no longer going to need guys to go in and kick in doors as much as we used to. Mm-hmm. And I kind of step back and think about it. And honestly, you will always need somebody. I don't care how good your tech is. I don't care how strategic or how precise it is. You will always require somebody with a pair of boots to fucking be on the ground to control something. Mm-hmm. You're never going to replace that. Just looking at Ukraine and what's going on, it's basically, it has reverted back to World War II type of brutal warfare with an undertone of low available deadly tech.
Mm-hmm.
So the need to have, alpha aggressive fucking individuals to go face to face with someone will always be needed.
Yeah, no, I agree. They're bringing back shotguns are back in style, both for trench warfare and for taking down drones.
Fucking fast, man. You might need a bayonet.
Oh, dude. I wonder how many times during the global war on terror people actually used bayonets. I know it happened.
The British kind of went out of their way in Iraq to use them a few times. But,
really?
as much as you think that, hey, the bayonet's obsolete, no. I'm sure a bayonet would go a long fucking way in Ukraine right now.
Yeah, no way. Yeah, dude. Again, like some of these videos of them like clearing trenches and shit, it's, that shit's up close and personal. And
yeah, somebody pops around one of those 4-way corners, bayonet might be your best bet.
That's so, God, I'm so glad, dude. I don't understand guys that want to volunteer and go over there and do that shit. You know what I'm saying? I know there's some guys that feel like they missed out on the GWAT, and you have veterans that were in that never actually deployed that kind of want to scratch that itch, and you have guys that never joined that kind of feel bad that they never did, or they want to seek out that adventure. And I get it, but I think that's one of those things like careful what you ask for. I think Ukraine is probably the worst of the worst,
Absolutely. You'll get it. And once you're there, you're going to realize, fuck, man, this is not what I thought it was going to be.
A fucking nightmare. That's what that shit is. That's a nightmare on both sides. I've seen these videos of them like on the Russian side, they're bringing out prisoners and stuff, and they'll commute their sentences if they spend a certain amount of time on the front line. But a lot of them are like, once they get there, they realize we're all going to die. We're all walking into the meat grinder here, and they like refuse to fight. And there was some video that came out a couple of weeks ago of Russians torturing other Russians that wouldn't fight, that refused to fight. And, and they're just like, they had them like tied to trees and shit like that. And
it's like fucking, that is textbook World War II Stalingrad.
Fucking crazy, dude.
Nothing's changed. Okay, the uniform changed a little bit. Still got the same rifles. And they got a couple quadcopter floating around. But it's fucking warfare. Tech changes. Warfare is still the same.
It's
a brutal business.
It blows my mind by how many people have been killed. I mean, when you look at it compared to like the global war on terror, like we had a bunch of people get killed, but not. I think they have hundreds of thousands of people have died between Ukrainians and Russians. Like that's insane to even think about. Hundreds of thousands.
You think it's an example of near peer force on force, where it's an economy of fucking numbers.
Mm-hmm.
When tech fails or isn't available, what's it go back to? It goes back to fucking shelling. And then when you can no longer advance, we're not building FOBs. No, we're digging fucking holes and living in holes.
Mm-hmm.
So it goes back to trench warfare.
Be wild to be a JTAC over there. You're talking about real air defense systems that you're having to account for, and just all kinds of wild targets. It wasn't like dudes in a tree line or dudes in a mud hut. Like, oh man,
that is a target rich environment.
Yeah, man. And like I said, more people keep signing up to go over there and fight and shit. I think there's been a couple Americans just recently get killed. I don't get it, but good on you if that's what you want to do. I just don't think it's worth it.
You do you, man.
You fucking do you. I'm good. Like, and it kills me because we see all these people getting murked in HD. It's like so many people are outraged by it, but not enough to stop it. It still keeps on keeping on. I don't know. It is what it is, man. When you guys were in Afghanistan, again, you were out kind of in the middle of nowhere. Did you guys don't the MARSOC teams normally have like some rangers or some soldiers that come out as part of their security element to like reinforce the team?
No.
No? I thought, man, I thought you guys had like Rangers or something that came out and did like security for some of the shit.
I mean, I guess if you're in a built-up area, an established area, maybe you've got a sister team that's with you. There was many instances where, we'd have an ODA, so Army Special Forces come in. They were the handlers for the commandos. They would come into our region. We would be on standby to support them.
Yeah.
But we were just so far removed. I mean, the nearest our nearest team to us, and for the first half of the deployment, they were 80 kilometers and 2 mountain ranges away.
Yeah.
And if there's bad weather, nobody's fucking coming. So I think it was a good opportunity, or I appreciated the opportunity to have a very tight bond and brotherhood with the Italians and the 82nd Airborne, because it quickly became apparent to everybody at Forward Operating Base Todd that if you're outside the wire and shit goes bad, nobody is coming for you, meaning nobody outside of the valley, especially if weather's bad.
Yeah.
Nobody's coming. Nobody's going to reach you in 48 hours.
That's crazy.
So we became a very tight family, not as MARSOC or 82nd or Italian Infantry. We became a Fob Todd family, where if somebody was in trouble, then we're all in.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what the fuck we're doing, we're all in, because ain't no one else coming.
When you're in a situation like that where you're so far removed from any kind of support, how do you keep from getting overran? I mean, because this was a pretty active area at the same time, wasn't it? So where Fob Todd was directly across the river from the city center, which basically was a very secure security bubble. There was a lot of space, meaning open field, around the fob. We had the high valley walls on the one side, which were manned by observation posts. So we had very good security at the fob. There's no way that they can make a run on the fob, because just the amount of space that they would have to clear to get to it, with our towers and our gun ramps and stuff, it was just a no-go. So it was pretty much, they would bide their time and wait in the fringes outside of the reach of the base. So if you could consider like the fob a hard point that couldn't be contested, they would wait just outside the fringes, so that once you got past checkpoint Y, you were no longer in direct support of the fob. And that's when they could get you. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, that's crazy though. Just being so far removed.
They just had to fight smarter.
Yeah.
A thinking enemy.
Yeah. It seems like, man, I'm surprised like that's not something that they ever tried. It seems like a lot of times they do that. What was that one Army base? It's where they got a couple Medal of Honors from it. Up in the mountains. They just see these vulnerable spots and overrun them. Yeah. I gotta remember the name of it. Damn. Sorry about that.
It's a movie.
Yeah, it's a whole movie. The Outpost.
That was a Clint Eastwood movie.
It was was it The Outpost? That's the name of the movie and the book.
Yeah, wasn't that a Clint?
That dude from CNN wrote the book. I don't remember his name. He's one of the news anchors. I forget. It's a pretty good book. For those that haven't read it, it's pretty interesting. On books and stuff. Have you written anything other than Level 0 Heroes and Dagger 2-2, or is that it?
I have not, man. To be honest with you, the process of writing the first book and the second book, I actually grew very fond and a love for writing. But I realized that, if I don't have something I actually am passionate and want to write about, the process and the emotional toll and the time that you have to devote to it to make it something worthy of releasing as a published piece of material is just so great. And I would love to write again. I just haven't found something that I would be enough invested in to tell a story to set aside the time and the mental anguish to write something else. But yeah, writing is still in my heart, man. And I think I will write again something. It just has to be the right thing.
You think it'll be more memoir style, or do you think it would be more fiction?
I don't know, man.
You don't know. Whatever scratches that itch at the time, huh?
Yeah, we'll see what the future holds.
Yeah, I get it, man, because I think on the last episode you were talking about how over your time in service you were just kind of taking notes along the way. Part of it was just part of the job, and part of it was, to remember some of this stuff. And one of the guys from your team was killed in a fire later on, and that's kind of what spurred you to want to publish and like memorialize, everything that you guys had all gone through. And I get that. I totally get why guys want to do that. And I can see why that's like a one-hit wonder kind of deal where this is it. I don't really, like you said, don't have the passion or maybe the want to go write about other stuff. But this point in my life was so important that it needs to be documented,
Yes.
Yeah. And I think for guys that can't write, guys and girls, that served during this last 20 years or whatever, I think podcasts are a great way for people to get out and tell their stories. And I think we talked about this a little bit on the last episode, but had you not written that book, how much of what happened there would never be known to anybody outside of participants in those actions? You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. When I started thinking about doing the podcast, it was like, man, I know a lot of guys that did a lot of cool shit that'll never get recognition, never. Yeah. And like you said earlier in the show, as a forward observer, you're like a bastard child of wherever it is you're at because you're supporting the guns at artillery or you're a support attachment to infantry. And even a lot of times guys get overlooked for awards and stuff because they're just kind of doing their job.
Absolutely.
And
yeah, you're not my Marine. Your parent fucking unit will take care of that.
Yeah. And I think there's so many stories out there that need to be told and, deserve to be recorded. So I think it's great, man, when you do something like what you did, and you did it early on too. Yours was the first book about MARSOC that came out. And it was like earlier in the global war on terror still. So I think independent publishing and people were still like military writers were still trying to figure out like a better way to do it. I mean, you did it right. I think you had good, as a marketing guy, I think you had good marketing. You had your website up, I think you were early on social media promoting it and stuff like that. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, when I wrote the first book, came out in about 2012. But prior to that, I was doing a lot online because I had made the decision that I was going to write the book. Mm-hmm. So writing the book is just half of it. If it never gets published, and nobody hears the story, then it really doesn't matter how good you think you fucking wrote the book.
Yeah.
If it doesn't actually reach readers. So I did a lot of, about a year prior to actually landing the book deal with St. Martin's Press, I just started a very robust and just kind of organic social media, I wouldn't say campaign. It was more like an exploration of interest. Mm-hmm. So I was basically putting things out that, prior to that, really the public didn't have access to, like actual photos of MARSOC and talking about it in order to gauge. So I basically was just like, hey, are people interested in this? I mean, should I just fucking stop posting or would you guys actually like to see it or hear the story? And the response was just overwhelming. Mm-hmm. That the general public and people very interested, not just people interested in SOCOM, people interested in just understanding about Afghanistan, want to hear a story from fucking some guy who they never heard of, but seemed passionate and connected with, the readers at a very organic level to say, hey, if I write this, would you guys be interested in reading it? And it just kind of, ballooned from there. where it drew enough attention that I was approached by a publisher.
That's awesome. That's the right way to do it, man. Again, I'm like a marketing guy now. That's what I do as my full-time gig. And that's what I try to like explain to people. Like, organic growth is the most important thing you can do, because if you can't get people, you know, organically excited about whatever it is that you're creating, then maybe it's not, you know, maybe it's not meant to be, kind of deal. You know, like if I have to force someone to like it, then
yeah. And I continued that, once I kind of like what I did with the writing of the book and telling the story. I wanted the reader to feel like they were a part of the story or looking in on it, not as an observer outside of it. I wanted them to feel like they were part of the story. So, all the attention that I got and the people I connected with before I got the deal with the publisher, once that happened, it was like, okay, we're doing this, and I want you all, meaning, the observing audience, to come along with this. And I wanted to, as I was learning things about, the publishing and how things are going, I wanted to share that with the public so that they, had a vested interest and felt like they were helping to support the actual venture of it. So that when it came time for the release, it wasn't the release of my book, it was the release of the story that people have been wanting to hear.
Yeah. It's the final chapter kind of deal. Yeah, I remember, man. I remember because it came out in between my deployments to Afghanistan, so it was easily relatable. It was, you're in my job field. I think I had either was getting ready to go or had just gone to TACP school, because I finished up in summer of 2012, and so, I mean, that's what drew me in. Obviously, it was an easy read for me to pick up because I spoke the language. I understood what you're talking about. We're talking about fire support and everything like that. I think a lot of people have a problem that want to write something or do something like a podcast or a social media page or something like that. Is we all know how like nitpicky veterans are, like the military community is. Like, say the name of a unit wrong, say the wrong radio type or something like that, and you got people are like, are you sure this dude's legit? Are you sure he served? It's like, and I get why people wouldn't want to put that on themselves, and I don't know. I think it's great though when these stories come out, and it gives the people. I'm very much of the belief that the average citizen should know where their money is going and what the military is doing. I don't like the shroud of secrecy on a lot of stuff. I understand that some stuff is classified and should be classified, but I also know from being on the inside that a lot of stuff is overclassified, and we don't talk about stuff for some reason. I don't know why. And as a marketing guy, I look at it like I tell clients, I go, hey, Marine Corps, if you're not driving the conversation about your brand on social media, you're letting other people do it. And they're going to do it however they want to do it and not what you want to do. So I think the military services are kind of coming around on social media. They're trying to figure out how to utilize social media and kind of understand that every person in the military has social media. So, there's going to be friction there, but I don't know. I think people ought to know more about what the military does and every day. And I think books like yours provide that insight. When I wanted to join, the only way to know about any job was maybe Discovery Channel had a documentary about it, or maybe there was a book from like Vietnam or something you'd read and be like, oh, that sounds cool. Now, with pages like Goons Up or Heavily Suppressed or something like that, you can go, man, I want to be not only like this certain specific MOS, but I want to be with this unit. I see them on social media and they're always doing badass shit. Yeah. It's like such a different world now,
Absolutely, man. It's changed and it ain't going nowhere either.
I was talking to someone, I'll leave unnamed. They were higher up in the general sphere of the military. And we were talking about how recruitment is low. And so he brought up a point I never really considered. I know that right now recruiters are having an issue because back in our day, if I went into the recruiter and wanted to join, they're going to ask me about any medical issues I had. and I'll just lie about it. And they may even tell me to lie about it. Well, now I guess you can't do that anymore. Everything is digitized. And so because of that, all medical records are easily accessible, and they can tell if you had a heart murmur when you were 7 and now you're disqualified. So there's an issue there where the medical records are disqualifying a lot of people that previously would have just lied about it and gone through. And also Gen Z is like half the size of the millennial group. So it's an even smaller pool of people that they're pulling from. And that's not something I ever really considered. I didn't even think about that as being an issue, you know, like the pool of applicants is half the size. And that's why there's even conversations about drafts and stuff like that, if it might be required, because there's just not enough people to sustain an all volunteer force, you know? So
yeah, it's definitely an issue, man. I mean, they don't have the endless, you know, guys wanting to join up like we did after 9/11. And, you know, they were turning people away. I mean, they were scheduling boot camps out like a year and a half out. Just because they didn't have to do any marketing. Yeah, it was just the people were just coming to them. You know, and as things, you know, kind of petered out with the GWAT, and you know, some of the coverage has been bad, especially with the withdrawal out of Afghanistan. Yeah, and then, you know, the reemergence of seeing, you know, after everything that was done in Iraq and kind of the Middle East area, it just keeps fucking collapsing over and over again. And it just seems to be the same fucking tune every couple of years. So it just, what drove my generation to military service no longer exists. And just like you said, you know, the obvious smaller pool of qualified individuals that actually have the want or the desire to serve. Knowing that, you know, the capacity of what it takes in military service, it's hard. It's not for everybody. And then you just keep whittling down the numbers, and then you're left with an extremely small pool of qualified people that actually have a desire to live that lifestyle, do that job. It's hard, man.
It's for sure a lifestyle. You know, that's something I've said to even my own son. It's like, you know, if you wanted to join the military, that's cool, but it's got to be something that you want, you know, because if it's not something that you want to do, you're going to go into it with probably some misconceptions, and it's going to be fucking miserable, you know, and you're just going to be miserable and you're not going to like it. But if you want it, then you're going to get what you want, and you're going to pay a little pain for the first year or two, but then after that, it's not bad.
Yeah. It's not all fucking running and gunning.
Yeah. It's a lot of ORM worksheets and vehicle inspections and whatnot.
Yeah.
I went to Valvoline the other day and got an oil change, and the guy was like, all right, we're going to check your headlights. Go ahead and was doing little hand signals. I was like, man, this is giving me flashbacks of a 96.
Your 96 fucking parking lot pre-inspection.
Yeah, do your fucking vehicle inspection. Oh, man. Yeah, dude, it's so crazy because you're right. Like back in the day, though, I mean, when I came in open contract, and I came in open contract because there were no infantry contracts. They were like, yeah, you can do infantry, but you're going to have to wait. It was like 3 or 6 months or something like that, because the quotas had already been filled. Because so many people were like, because guys were like, hey, if I'm going to join the Marine Corps, I'm fucking joining the infantry, you know? And I just don't think that's the case as much anymore. So I don't know, definitely a different time. But I think this kind of podcast, your book, you know, the different social media pages, I think it paints a realistic picture of what actually occurs in the military, and it shows like the cool stuff and the fun stuff and the great stuff, and it also shows the shitty stuff, and it shows the stuff that really sucks, and that, you know, sometimes you just gotta bear down and get through it. And I think that's what has to happen. You can't just have that shiny, polished, you know, version of it out there and tricking people into joining. You know, they should know what they're getting themselves into, you know? Yeah.
I mean, I could only imagine having access to a podcast like this, you know, prior to me going, I didn't know anything about the fucking military. But just having resources like this, information like, you know, like your podcast, just the kind of format that you have where it's just, you know, bringing on fellow vets, you know, that have done things and just fucking talk about it. Yeah, we're going to share all the good times, but we're also going to not shy away and not highlight, some of the bullshit and some of the struggles that we all had to go through and fucking manage to navigate.
Yeah, and I tell that to guys too. I'm like, you're out, man. You can tell us about the bullshit. You can tell us, they can't hurt you anymore.
Yeah.
Tell us what really happened.
Just have a talk, man. Just fucking tell it like it is. I mean, that's the same approach I took with the book. I never tailored anything or said, oh, I can't say that, or I fucking should stray away from that topic. No, for myself personally, if I was confident and good with just telling my story and what I observed, truthfully and honestly, then it doesn't really matter what the fallout is from it, because I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, exactly. That's good. That's good advice for sure. When you wrote your book and everything, you said did the publisher seek you out, or were you looking at different publishing options at the time? I think now it's easier. I think you can basically write a book and Amazon will publish it for you for a fee.
You can, but the big kind of crux of it is distribution and the networking change. Like, yeah, you can write a book, you can throw it up on Amazon, but if you don't, have that kind of organic social media, if you don't have a way for people to know it exists and how to get it, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
When it comes to like old school, traditional legacy kind of publishing, it's their distribution that they already have. So basically, once you connect with a publisher, you're basically accessing their reach, which is a huge part of it, because if you didn't, or if the publisher wasn't doing that, you would have to do all of that.
Yeah.
And it would easily become overwhelming. When I basically had put out to a few select people that, hey, I'm in the process of doing this. Here's the public response I've got from this project. I'm looking to do this. I don't know fucking diddly squat about the publishing industry. You have information about X, or hey, you wrote a book. Hey, if there's anyone you can help point me in the right direction. And then one day I just received a fucking email in my inbox from St. Martin's Press saying, hey, word is you're wanting to write a book on, this topic. Let's talk.
That's awesome. That doesn't happen to everybody.
No. And I tell people, like, people always want to ask me for, like, well, how did you do it? Give me suggestions or what are the best practices? And I tell people when they ask me, I'm like, don't fucking do it the way I did it, because I don't know. The way I went about it and how it happened, I'm pretty sure it's not how the industry works.
Yeah. You kind of got lucky and caught a stray there.
Yeah. It was just the right time. I just had good feedback from the general public on the topic. No one else had written a book yet. I wasn't bound by any NDA or anything like that. And I was very passionate and artistic about how I wanted to tell the story. And everything just came together. Well, it really just came together.
You were right about, you said before, like, if people don't know you're writing it, then they're not going to buy it. So I was talking to I had a guy on the podcast before who's an author, and I'm like, yeah, what's your social media so I can put it up on the screen and stuff? And he's like, oh, I don't really do Instagram or anything. And I'm like, man, as a marketing guy, you're killing me. I'm like, at a minimum, you should have a Instagram page for your book. If anything, make posts up until the day the book releases, so at least you can get the word out about the book. You don't have to maintain it afterwards, but that's people that are in business or writing or thinking about writing a book. That's something to consider. Is like, if you don't like social media, that's fine, but you're giving up free advertising. You're giving up free marketing. Imagine like in the 90s, if I told a company like, hey, you can make a 30-second video and it'll get 500,000 views, and the only thing you're going to pay for is your time to make the video. They'd be like, what? Let me do that for sure. They pay,
free advertisement, man.
It's so crazy. Like, people don't even consider that. I'm like, man, get on top of it. You don't have to go become a social media whore and, become like the next influencer guy.
Yeah.
But at least put your stuff out there so people is aware.
And you could, just tailor it to your style or what you're comfortable creating. You don't have to be all in, you could just, like, I I post maybe like once a week or so on my Instagram, and I'm basically just I do it for the readers of the book, where I publish old images that have never been released before, and it just helps to keep your community and the interest in your project alive. But also, I just enjoy doing it because I enjoy seeing those fucking old photos.
Yeah, man, it brings back all kinds of memories and stuff. You know, are you on Reddit? Do you go on Reddit and post?
No, I don't post on Reddit.
I go on Reddit sometimes and just like engage some in some of the military forums and stuff. I think that's the key, though, is you got to find the social media platform that you're comfortable with and that your audience is on. You know, some people are comfortable with like a Reddit kind of forum where they can go on and just throw stuff out there, and you don't have to do imagery and all that other crap. Some people like Instagram. You know, I don't even fuck with TikTok. Even as a marketing person, I tell people, I'm like, yeah, I'll do social media and help you with social media, except for TikTok. I was like, I just don't like the security issues with the company and stuff. So yeah,
it's junk.
But yeah, man. Well, this has been a good conversation. Super interesting, dude. Where can now that we've talked about social media and marketing and stuff, where can people find you?
People can either visit the website, levelzeroheroes.com, or not too active on the Facebook. It's static. Really is the Instagram is the kind of one that I enjoy because I'm a very visual person.
Facebook's dying, man.
Yeah, I just enjoy that. Yeah, I'm about to fucking roll it back to MySpace and start typing out fucking HTML.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, Instagram is the one that I am active on. So you do Level Zero Heroes on there, and I post pretty much every week. You know, some old archive photos that I have thousands of, and it's just awesome to get them back out there. And it for me, it feels like I'm breathing life kind of back into the story and back into the memory of all the people that were a part of the story. Yeah,
for sure, man. Keeping it alive, you know, that's one of that saying, like, you never die, or you die twice, once when you die and once when someone says your name for the last time, you know. So you keep that information going out there and letting people know.
No, I archive it because I also tag the official MARSOC page.
Nice.
So, you know, people that are looking up MARSOC or you know, Special Operations Forces, you know, hopefully it gets gobbled up by their algorithm or their fucking feed.
Yeah, maybe. Hopefully it does too. That'll be cool. I will put a link to your website in the show description so people can check that out. And then, as always, people can check out my website, jkramergraphics.com. My Instagram is @FormerActionGuys, @FormerActionNews. And that's it, man. Another episode in the books.
Fuck yeah.